So this is Workflow Builder. As I mentioned, workflow, as the name suggests, it helps automate your business process. We have seen that throughout our functional sessions. When you have a workflow assigned, it gives you a controlled way of performing the workflow business process. And you can modify it based on your organization's need. And you can assign it to any forms, custom forms, or the default forms, and the document that you have created. We saw how to assign workflows to documents as well. And typical workflow structure, it works in this way. By default, if you create a workflow, it creates a 3-stage workflow. Draft is the first stage. And if anybody performs a submit action, it goes to the submitted workflow stage. From there, they have the ability to either send the record back to draft stage or approve it, which will go to the final stage, which is approved. So you have different keywords. One is stage, action, activity. See, these are all different keywords that you need to be familiar with. And a typical process of a workflow is you define a workflow by entering a name of it, description of it. You would assign which form that you want to associate this workflow to. So all these things you will do right at the beginning of defining a workflow. Once you have done that, when you click next, you will go to the next section where you build your workflow. So by default, like I mentioned, a 3-stage workflow will get created. So if you are happy with that 3-stage workflow, all you have to do is click each stage, assign action stakeholders, set up some notification function, capabilities for that particular stage. And if you want to enable certain actions or add new actions or modify existing action, you can do that. Once you have done that, you can preview how your workflow looks, save it, publish it, mark it as default so that when your functional form is there, by default, this workflow will be assigned to that form. In addition, this is the basic structure. If you want to add additional functionalities that the workflow builder provides, you can do that as well. So in the Masterworks application, like where we accessed form builder, we have another form called workflow management. You click that, it will land you on the workflow list page. You have all the workflows that have been created for Masterworks implementation. Everything will be listed here. Some of them will be saying validation, which is enabled. That means those workflows are system workflows. You cannot change them. You can copy them and make edits to the copied version of it. If you have created it by yourself, you will see that the validation is not checked. That means you can anytime go and edit your workflow that you have created. And you can mark that as default, publish them. You can do all that at the workflow level. Once you click there, click new, you will land on the general details. Like I mentioned, you can enter your name of your workflow, any descriptive explanation for you to relate to the workflow. Select the form. We had created a custom form. I will show you how to assign a workflow to your custom form. And there are 3 options that I will explain when I do the demo. When you click apply, by default, this is the 3-stage workflow that gets created, draft, submitted, and approved. And on the left side, you have your actions, your simple activities, similar to workflow builder, similar to form builder. In workflow builder as well, you have 2 modes, simple mode and advanced mode. By default, you will be always landed on the simple mode. Based on that, you will also see the actions on the left side, the controls that you see will differ based on whether you are on a simple mode or an advanced mode. When you switch to advanced, you will see a lot more options there. And that's the left navigation tree. On the center is where you build your workflow. On the right side, based on which control that you have picked, whether you have picked an action, a stage or an action, or any of I'm sorry about this, there's a flight going. Yeah. Or if you want to click any of these arrow marks, you have controls according to that as well, appearing on the right side. So that's pretty much how the UI looks. And you have multiple ability to do. You can add a checklist to your workflow action. You can add more actions to a particular stage. You can add additional stages as well. You can associate more workflows, smart fit. You can set stakeholders for specific stages. You can do all that. I would like you to explore all that beyond the assignment that I've given you. But for the assignment, I have requested you to create a 4-stage workflow. So basically what I've requested you to do is add 1 more stage, add actions to them, associate workflow stakeholders to them, action stakeholders to them, so that you will be able to see how the workflow performs when you associate it to your form, right? So these are some of the capabilities. And the terminology, like I mentioned, you need to be aware of is the stage. Stage is nothing but a collection of logical or building blocks of a workflow. And action stakeholders are the ones who will be able to perform any workflow action at that particular stage. View stakeholders are the ones who can view the record at any particular stage. They may not be able to perform any workflow action there. Days to complete means that if there is a workflow action that is pending, if you mention any number of days, that would indicate that the stakeholder needs to perform that workflow action in that number of days. And action is nothing but the activity that the stakeholder is performing at any stage. For example, if it is at the draft stage, the action that they will perform is submit. If they are in the submitted workflow stage, the two actions, possible actions that they can perform is redraft or approve. So that is the action. Status is what is appearing on the system. So if you don't specify anything, the stage name is what will appear on the list page. If you set any other name to that status, that will start appearing on it. When I do the demo, I will explain that as well. Once you have created your workflow and you come back to your workflow, you can either publish it right from there, or you can come back to the list page and publish your record. It is important for you to mark any new workflow that you create for a form as default, if that is the only workflow that you have associated to that form. Only when you associate it, mark it as default, when you go back to your functional form, you will see the workflow related options appearing, and you will have an associated workflow for that form to begin with. If you have multiple workflows created for a specific form, one of them needs to be marked as default. So that's the ground flow. All right, so these are two things that you need to keep in mind when you are working with the workflow option. Right, this is what I mentioned, marking it as default. Now let me go to the system and start explaining how to create a workflow. So now let me go back to the administration module, and I click workflow management. I collapse the navigation tree. So here you will see all the workflows that are available within Masterworks. Some that are system created, those are marked as validation. Those are things that you cannot edit. If you want to replicate it, you can just click there, copy it, make a copy of it, and edit the copied workflow. All right. So the ones that we have created manually are not marked as validated. That means it is not system validated. Those are custom workflows. And this column called published, that means those are all published. And if anyone is marked as default, that is indicated here. And there are other options here. I'll come to that after we have built the workflow. And I click new. So as I showed in the PPT, we land on the general details tab. I'll just enter a name for it. Description is not mandatory. So in select form, I start typing in. So these are all the forms that I had created. Lionel team members was the first one that I created. Lionel project team is what I did in the demo right now. So this is where you associate a form to a workflow. And then there are three more options. So configure view permissions means in addition to assigning action stakeholders for each stage in your workflow, you are also configuring view stakeholders. That means at any workflow stage, you would want to see at least the record that is there on the list page. That for that to happen, you need to assign view permissions to certain stakeholders. So you are enabling that feature by selecting this checkbox. Second one is enable editing by non-action stakeholders. So when you select action stakeholders, they have ability to perform workflow actions. If you don't enable this, that means they will only be able to perform workflow actions. That means if the record is in submitted stage, those stakeholders may not be able to perform any modifications in the record, even though if they have edit permission in that form. If you don't enable it, those people, those security roles will only be able to perform workflow actions. They will not be able to perform any edit actions in that particular form, even though they have edit permissions assigned in the permissions form. So this will override the permissions configuration that you had done there. So if you do that, if they have edit permissions assigned for the form to begin with, if they are non-action stakeholders, they should still be able to edit the record. That is what I have enabled here. Allow workflow action by all stakeholders. So what this means is, if they have, if they have view permission, I mean, if they are view stakeholders, non-action stakeholders, action stakeholders, if you want them to perform any workflow action, you would want to enable this checkbox. If you want to read more about it, you have these tooltip as well. So I have enabled these three things and I click apply. The moment I apply, a 3-stage workflow is automatically generated. All right. So you have these stages, all these things displayed here. If I click advanced, the simple activity and the advanced activity is also listed here. So let me first show you how a 3-stage active workflow works, and then I will show you how to add another stage. So I click a particular stage and the attribute related to the stage is listed here. So name of the stage, you can change the name based on that. It will start appearing here. Days to complete, like I mentioned, if you by default, it is coming as 2. This is based on the configuration that is done at the administration level. I'll show that in the next session. Action stakeholders, I can say administrator can take action and associate project manager can take action of submitting the record. All right. View stakeholders, administrator, associate project manager, senior project manager. All these can view the record at this stage. And allow delete. That means, would you want the record to be deleted after the record is submitted? That is the whole point. So if I want to allow delete, I will say yes. If I don't want to allow delete, I will say no. And if you want to send email to any stakeholders the moment this workflow action is taken place, you can select this checkbox. When you do that, you would have to accordingly specify the email template and show stage in tasks. This is my tasks. So as you are aware, any workflow action that happens, any workflow stage pending action that is there, those stakeholders will also receive a my task notification. So would you want that to happen? By default, it is selected. I'll just keep it as is. And all action stakeholders will get the notification when in their my tasks when this is selected. Ball and code, I will not get into it because ball and code is not something that we utilize as effectively. We have just retained those two features here. I will not explain that at this point. So what we have done as of now is I just selected the stage and I assigned an action stakeholder and view stakeholder. Likewise, I'm going to do that for other stages as well. So in submitted action, I want to assign it. In submitted, I want only project manager and senior project manager to take action. Associate project manager who submitted the record, I don't want them to approve it. So I'm not having them as the action stakeholder. But I would want those associate project managers to view the record. So I'm selecting them as the view stakeholder here. And would I want anybody to edit the record after it is submitted? I may, but would I want anybody to delete the record after it is submitted? I would not want to. So I select no. Rest I will just leave it as is. And I go to approve. This is the final workflow stage. As you can notice, there is no action to be taken here, so you don't see any action stakeholders. But would you want the record that is in an approved status to be viewed by anybody? Yes. So I will select all those people who can view the record when it is in the approved workflow stage, and I do not want the record to be deleted when it is in the approved workflow stage. So I just told you how to configure a simple 3-stage workflow and publish this. So I just added action stakeholders and view stakeholders for each of these, and I will publish this record. So now I have published it and I will mark this as default as well. Right. So I have my own project team workflow. I have published it and this is the default workflow. So as you can see, notice this form still is not reflecting that yet. When I refresh this, you will start seeing the workflow related options appearing here. So you can see the workflow options are all coming here because I have associated a workflow to this form and I have also marked it as default. If you don't mark it as default, you will not see this. I have marked it as default. I can see the workflow actions here. So if I create a record, I pick a resource name. Just because we have made it as mandatory, I'll just pick it here and I will keep it as employee type and I submit the record. So I submitted it. The roles that are pending on are administrator, project manager and senior project manager. You don't see the associate project manager here because it's already in submitted stage. If I had just saved it, it will be in draft. So from draft to push it to the next level, you would see administrator and associate project manager only. So from submitted, you had the option to go push it to redraft, right? So I redrafted this record. I sent it to redraft. So now what you see is administrator and associate project manager are the only two roles who can submit this record. So this is how you define a workflow for your record. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit the same workflow and add one more stage and I will show you how that reflects here. Okay. I'm selecting this record and I click edit. The moment you edit it and make changes the record will automatically get unpublished. So you would have to mandatorily go back and publish the record for you to start reflecting the changes in the functional form. Right. So now I'm just going to add another stage. So right now it is submitted. I want another stage called reviewed. So I add a stage. I just drag it here. So I got a stage added. Right. I want the stage to be right here. And what that means, I don't want this to be approved. I want this to be reviewed. Right. This is review. I've changed it. And this stage, I want this name of the stage to be reviewed. OK, and the action stakeholders for this should be only administrator and project coordinator or senior project manager, only these two. And view stakeholders can be all of those. All right, so this is reviewed. Just by adding a stage, can I do anything? No, I need to add actions to it. How would I do that? I can either right click and add new action, or I have a button called add action. I can do it either way. I just clicked action. So this action, I want this to be redraft again. So what I mean is even at this stage, if I want to push it back to draft, I can do that. So I have added another stage. I'll add one more action, and this action I want to name it as approve. So here is where I want to approve the record. So I've just added a stage and I added two actions. For this stage, I have added action stakeholders and view stakeholders. I don't want the record to be deleted here, and I don't want the record to be edited here as well. Let me keep it as is. So now I have done this. Now I want to connect the workflow itself properly. So how would I do that? This review, from review, it has to go to review. So I select this arrow mark. I see this two blue marks. I just click my mouse here and drag it and place it here. So all I did was click the arrow. The black marks became blue. That means it is selected. I just clicked the blue mark from the arrow end and I dragged it here. From redraft, all I'm doing is just click it here. When I click it, wherever I can place the arrow, all those are marked in, highlighted in bigger black circles. So I just drag it and pull it into the draft stage. So this was also highlighted, right? So I just dragged it into draft. And this approve, I wanted to move to approved. All right. So all I did is added a new stage, added some stakeholders here, and I added two stages, two actions here. So I'll just see. So here we have project manager and senior project manager. Here we have only senior project manager. Now let me go ahead and publish this record. All right, so it is published. Now let me go back to the form, refresh this form. So the key here is if you have already created a record in the form which had a workflow associated to it, if you make any workflow changes later, that workflow record will not have any workflow update, will not have any update on the previous record. So this will still go ahead and get approved, right? It will not go to reviewed or anything. When new records get created, if the new workflow or updated workflow was associated to this, any new record that you create, those records will have the new workflow update reflected, right? Alvin, contractor, PM company. I pick a resource name called Johnson Wood and I submit this record. So this record should go to reviewed and not submitted. Sorry, submitted. And from here, it should go to reviewed and not approved. So it is review now. So now it is reviewed, and depending on roles are only administrator and senior project manager. So I can go and approve this record. So now I have added a new stage in my workflow. The last thing I want to show you is how can I add a condition, a simple condition based on the employee type. If for the employee type is a contractor, it needs to be submitted and then go through. If it is any other type, it can directly go to reviewed and go to the approved. So if I can jump a stage itself, how can I do that? We have ability to do so. It is in the simple control itself. So we have simple activity called conditions block. So I'm just going to drag a conditions block here, right? This condition block need to have a condition. So this condition, I can have two conditions here. First condition is if contractor, correct? So if contractor, how will I add that condition? I click that, the condition rule window comes up. So you can add form attributes or project attributes. You have all the options. I click add rule. I say employee type is equal to contractor. I just did that and I saved this record. Right. So this is the condition that would lead me to go to submitted. This condition should jump this whole thing and directly go to review. Right. So this I am going to change it if any other type. And I add the condition here. Not equals contractor. So for that to happen, I need to actually, once it submits, it has to go to the condition block so that whatever record that got submitted will be validated. And based on that, I am dragging this here. So if it is a contractor, it has to go to submitted. If it is any other type, it has to go to reviewed. Right. So this is the condition that I have added. That's all I did. I am going to publish this record. I go back to my functional form. I click new. So again, I'll just say Kevin. I'll pick a resource. So this employee type is contractor, right? This employee type is contractor. So if I submit, it should go to submitted, or it should go to, yeah, it should go to submitted. The status should be submitted. It should go to review now. Right. So right now this workflow status is submitted. So if I create one more record, which is not contractor, consultant, or any other for that matter, specialist, I submit, it should go to reviewed. Right. So I just added a simple condition and I skipped a particular workflow stage completely based on the value that I had entered. So these are some of the simple things that you can do at a workflow stage. There are tons of options that are available in workflow. So I would like you to explore it on your own. And if you have any questions, we can obviously discuss that. But these are things that you need to get started with so that you are aware of how to create a workflow, how to assign action stakeholders to different stages in the workflow, assign it to any form, mark them as default, and you can see that happening in the system at the functional aspect of it.